We are now on the third part of my egg freezing journey, and today I wanted to touch on the emotional part because, as much as this has been a very logical process in the making, the last 3 years I've been investigating preserving my fertility, and although it's all followed a process and it's been really clear and methodical, the emotional part has also been something that I've had to deal with. Um, as soon as I started the egg freezing journey, I had this strange realization of why on earth am I trying to freeze my eggs and preserve my chances of bringing kids into this world? Because it was around the time of the regional war and conflict in the Middle East, which is, of course, an area that I was living in. And at the same time, there was a certain files that were erupting. And I just thought, my God, this is such an ugly, disgusting world, an evil world we live in. Why am I trying to bring children into this world? And that realization happened to me literally as soon as I started injecting myself. And I thought, oh my God, have I made the worst mistake? Because I've touched on faith, and I know that if I'm supposed to have kids, it will happen by God's will. So I thought, why am I forcing it? Why am I spending all this money? Why am I injecting all these hormones into my body? Like, I was starting to spiral. I fortunately had a great friend of mine who had been through a recent IVF process, and she just brought me back down to earth. And she said, "Remind yourself why you're doing this. You're doing it to preserve your chances of fertility in the future and to give you more of a backup and a reserve." And that exactly was the only reason I did it. Not because I needed to do it, not because I'm desperate. It was all just an insurance policy. And as I've mentioned before, it is an expensive process, and it does involve lots of medication. It does involve surgery. So, it's not just a small decision, and it was 3 years in the making. I also ended up seeing this post online, which spurred me on. Um, I'm, I've touched on spirituality. I'm a very spiritual person, and it said that in this world, we also need to bring in people that are going to be those healers. And, who is to say that, yes, it's a difficult time to be raising children and bringing children into this world, with things like AI and all of these things. To me, it just seems very negative. But at the same time, throughout history, there's never been a times where it hasn't been challenging and difficult. And coming back to the post I saw online, it was something along the lines of, like bringing people in that could effectively change the world and, can kind of impact humanity in a more positive way. And I think, I've always said that if I'm not desperate to have children, and I'm only going to bring children into this world if I meet the right person. And naturally, when you do meet someone you love and care for and you respect, and there's that equal partnership, you're naturally going to want to build a unit. And I think if that is the product of a healthy relationship, then why wouldn't I want to bring children into this world? And you would hope that you would raise children with your own values and beliefs, and who knows, you could be bringing in someone that could effectively change the world. So that might sound really cheesy, but I just thought, if I'm meant to have children, then me preserving my fertility, especially that was in my 30s, I thought this is just the right decision. And another thing that spurred me on was when I was in Saudi Arabia. I was with one of my colleagues, and she sadly found out that she became infertile completely. She went to get a second opinion back in Jordan, where she's actually from, because I told her to. I said, look, don't rely on just one source, go home and relax and figure it out. And she came back and she sadly told me that, unfortunately, her results came back that she had, effectively gone into a menopause. And I thought, blimey, this girl was much younger than I was. And then coming back onto my second video about how my friends, were struggling to conceive, I just thought to myself, this is a sign that I'm doing the right thing, because you can't take these things for granted. Like, yes, I'm young, I feel young, and I'm healthy, thank God. But you just never know what can happen with your body. So that was a real emotional realization I had just as I started the process. I also remember on the day of the retrieval, I've somehow managed to get a sore throat. I already have allergies anyway, so I sometimes can sound quite nasal. I think people have picked up on that sometimes. So on the morning of my retrieval, I was like, damn, like I've got a sore throat, I'm coughing. It felt like the start of a chest infection. And the craziest thing was, I went into overdrive because I thought, I need this egg retrieval to happen today. I cannot afford to like lose out on all this money I've spent. My ovaries are literally about to burst because I've grown, so many eggs in 1 month, and we usually only grow one, like mature one. And I remember going into the hospital in the morning and I thought, I'm not going to tell the consultant or the nurse or the person that was going to administer the anesthesia to me, because I thought, imagine if they turn around and say, like, you've got an infection, so we can't, put you under general anesthesia today. And I remember I lied about it and I felt like I was going to die. Like, it's crazy because I thought I'm already asthmatic and I had a tight chest that day, so I was literally pumping myself with my emergency inhaler because like I felt like I just couldn't breathe. And at the same time I was lying to the staff and I thought, oh my god, I'm going to die, I'm going to die on this bed because I've lied, that I've got a sore throat. I literally kept developing saliva in my mouth and I was like spitting it out just before I was about to get put into the theatre. And I thought, what am I doing? Like, I should have been honest. But I remember kind of last minute panicking, and I said to the woman, I was like, is it okay that I've been like taking a pump of my inhaler? She was like, yeah, yeah, absolutely. She was like, if anything that's going to help us, what is she under? And I thought, thank God, because I just didn't want to. And don't take that advice from me, because if you are feeling, any kind of symptoms, you should absolutely share them. But I think it was because I just didn't want anything to kind of, for them to decide that it wasn't the right day, and I just could not. I did not have the time to repeat the process. So that was like another emotional part of it. But I think that was all self-inflicted. So I'm such an overthinker. I would say, other than that, the other emotional parts, I think I've mentioned it before. As soon as my biggest anxiety around the whole process was injecting, but that became a breeze, touch words. Like, it really wasn't as big a deal as I thought. Once you get used to it, it kind of just, you just do it so routinely. So that didn't really become a part of the journey. I think it was just realizations along the way of, I'm doing this heavy process. I've no idea if I'm ever going to actually use them, because once you've frozen, that doesn't necessarily mean that that is your only reserve. It's not like I've removed all chances of my body producing its own eggs. My body is still going to be producing eggs. So there's still a chance that I'm going to be naturally conceiving and never touching these eggs that I've, spent a fortune trying to freeze. But ultimately, it all comes back to the reason of why I started it in the first place. It is purely a reserve that I may never ever need to use, and I can just dispose of them in 10 years. Um, I'm hoping I never have to use them, but you have to be smart in this world. And if there's options and you can, you have the financial means to do it, then I believe you should do it. Especially as you're getting older, you cannot be naive about these things. And I am somebody that likes to control everything. But I know I can't control every little thing, but I definitely, if there's a way for me to at least control some like parameters of my fertility, I'm going to do it. Um, so I would say that they were all the key emotional ups and downs that I really went on. I wasn't nervous about the surgery. I didn't even want to know what was going to be happening on the day of, and I still don't really know what happens. That's something that consultant does. You get put to sleep. Um, the anesthesia kicks in, you do a little countdown, you go off into a nice little slumber, and it is the weirdest feeling. But if you've had surgery before, it shouldn't be unusual. But if it is your first time, just stay calm, think of a good place. You'll have the best sleep of your life and wake up. I woke up to some biscuits. Um, I was actually on my own the day I woke up. I didn't have anyone with me, which was fine. I tend to do everything on my own as it is, so that didn't bother me. But you should absolutely have someone there to hold your hand when you wake up. You obviously can't drive alone, so my mom came to pick me up after my retrieval. But I didn't bleed or anything afterwards, and obviously you can't physically, so you can't see any incisions. It's all internal. I just felt a little bit sore, I would say, but I think that feeling really only lasted for like a day or two. Um, I also didn't go back to my gym schedule for probably 2 or 3 weeks, and maybe even longer, because there's a chance, they say, that your ovaries can become twisted. And obviously, your body's been through a lot. Your body's gone through so much hormonal medication. Your ovaries have been bursting with lots of mature eggs, and you just need to give your body a chance just to calm down. I would say the biggest thing I saw was that my next period, remember my friend saying her next period was very painful. Mine was just, it just took longer. So usually my periods are very regular, 28, 29 days, but this time it stretched to like 37 days, I think. And it was, that rarely happens to me. The only other time that's ever happened to me was when I took the COVID injection. So I would say that my period cycles took probably 2 months to go back to normal. But other than that, I don't know if anyone's noticed, and I've talked about it before, but I have put on a bit of weight since I started the process. Not excessive, and I don't think it was actually linked to the egg freezing itself. Like, yes, like your stomach can look a bit bloated when you're injecting yourself, and obviously I use the top of my thighs as the injection points. Um, I didn't really bruise, so just be careful when you're injecting yourself. But I think the weight gain, I put on a few kilos for sure. And this, I'm someone that's very physically active. I walk a lot, I go to the gym. But I think it was, regardless of all of that physical activity, I think I didn't realize the impact of all of this emotional stress. And I had a lot of other stuff going on at the same time. So it was just like this perfect storm of just different emotional things that were impacting me, that were on my mind. And I think that is then was starting to show in my body. But you have to give your body a chance just to rest and heal. Getting back to the gym and all of these things, you can keep doing it, but you're just going to stress your body out more. So that's one thing that I started to realize recently, that I'm trying to like lose all this weight that I've put on from the emotional process, but I have frozen my eggs, and that's a massive achievement. So it's just kind of, taking things a day at a time. And, I'm someone that likes to conquer the world. That's just who I am. I feel like I can do everything. I can do it all at once. But at some point your body's like, yo, just chill out. Like, you've done this huge thing, like just relax now. So that's what I'm trying to do now, is just, breathe into my life, like just relax. And, I've done this amazing thing for myself. It's one thing paying for degrees and paying for your education and your career, but to do something so personal like this, I'm so glad. And I do recommend it for any woman who's in the kind of stage that I'm in life.